thank you very much. Obviously, it's an honor to be here. So I'll just jump right into it. I think you guys, if you saw the video that features the LGM and the way cooler than me, Farmer Phil, in that video, you sort of got an understanding of what it is. But I'll give you a little bit about how we came to be, a little bit more about what the LGM is, the leafy green machine, why we created it, sort of who uses it, and then we'll just spin off into any direction that sort of feels right. So as was stated, we founded Freight Farms in 2010. That's myself, obviously, and my co-founder, John, at a freight farm at the Boston Latin High School in Boston, Massachusetts, which has now been there for about 2 years and is fully student-run. So we have a small team of students, probably right around the exact age of you guys, who run their own farm and do with it what they will, creating a CSA program, putting food in the community, so on. At that time, 2010, John and I were actually in consulting in urban rooftop development, focused on rooftop development for greenhouse production of food. And long story short, we worked with a number of different clients in that space who wanted to grow food in the cities, and there were so many different hurdles, issues, and just barriers to them actually doing it in any type of way that was effective, both economically and physically in a lot of ways, that we realized there was a bigger opportunity to put that power of commercial scale food production in the hands of more people in more spaces. And so that's really what the whole idea was behind Freight Farms. We saw a privileged few who can afford millions of dollars to grow in greenhouses on rooftops in expensive real estate in cities, and that was taking it out of the hands of so many millions of people who could grow in a parking lot, could grow in an abandoned lot, could grow in a side lot, could grow in an old warehouse, what have you. Activate that space, put the economic and the food power into the hands of those people, allow them to grow that food anywhere. So this is a couple of guys in Detroit who are actually just getting started with us. And right now, I think this map's a little outdated. I think we're in 13 states throughout the U.S. and a couple provinces in Canada where people of all different walks of life are growing food, which is pretty cool to see. I think I turned it off. Nope. So yeah, the leafy green machine, again, a little bit of an overview. Some of the bits of power about it, it is a turnkey solution that comes fully assembled, ready to operate when it hits the ground, and creating that perfect environment in any conditions from southern Texas all the way through Canada, performing optimally, and automating all of the heavy technical issues of hydroponic production. That's the environment, that's the water, that's everything that has to do with the farm. Just to answer the question in case I didn't, hydroponic growing, if you don't know, is the art and the science of growing without soil. So instead of putting plants in soil, you put them into a medium or a substrate, and water, nutrients they flow past the roots, giving them everything they need to grow a plant. This is our one of our LGMs. This was actually before it got to its final resting place at Google. One of the things that's nice is our ability to optimize space, year-round production, fresh, efficient supply, all important factors. One of the big pieces that you can put down this 40-foot box, put it in a parking lot next to one of your cafeterias, and then when you find a final spot, put it there, put down another one, put 3, put 4, start stacking them up, getting really creative, which is always fun to see. Inside the box, some of the tech specs, if you will. We have 128 high-efficiency LED lights. We designed and created specifically for the system, producing a deep red-blue blend of light for photosynthesis of the plants. There's also 256 vertical towers. Those are 7-foot towers that can hold between 12 and 25 plants, depending on the variety, so that you have almost 5,000 mature plants possible inside of 320 square feet. Again, it's all about efficiency, so the system recirculates all of our water as well as the humidity in the air to use the water that's actually transpired by the plants. Plants obviously use the water, but then part of it is lost. So we recirculate that into the system so that we're actually able to use about 10 gallons of water a day in a full operating farm. And being in a sealed, insulated box is a giant barrier against pests so that we're able to eliminate the use of chemicals, herbicides, and pesticides to have some really clean greens. Beyond that, sort of the technical aspect of it, one of the things we worked a lot on was creating the technology so that it would disappear. I mean, all the cool stuff that we use, you don't know what goes on to make it do what it does. You know, like your smartphone does exactly what you want it to do, but you don't have to write code to get it to send an email. It just does. You don't have to program it to make a phone call. You just hit send. That's the whole idea, is to create a tool that people can use, same as their smartphone, and a lot of it's done on their smartphone using our suite of software and apps. That is the Farmhand suite of apps. So our core app is Farmhand Connect, which is part of that suite that controls the farm, connects you to the farm, and also keeps supplies in the hands of the grower. So Farmhand Connect monitors crop growth, tracks environmental conditions, allows people to manage multiple farms, and also allows your farm to talk to you. So if your farm is out of whack in any type of way, and whether it's temperature, humidity, gas mix, the water's off nutrient level, the pH is wrong, it'll send you an alert and let you know what's going on. And you can also virtually pop into your farm. So if you had a farm down, we were down at the makerspace earlier today, which is very cool. But if you had a farm down there and it was kind of a gross night out and you didn't quite want to have to walk down there just to take a look at things, you open your Farmhand Connect, you look in, there's a visual look at what's happening through the cameras, and then you check all your stats, your temperature, your humidity, all of these other things. And you can say, my farm is good, I'm going to bed. Or, I want to go down and check on my farm. It really leaves it up to you, so you can spend more time doing everything else. And one of the big pieces that's kind of cool is we're activating people who were never farmers before. Most of the people who are growing across North America right now really just saw a need for fresh, healthy, high-quality, local food in their community and said, I want to do that, but I also don't want to go out into the country and buy 5-10 acres. I don't want to try and site a greenhouse. I really don't want to become an expert. I just want to have thousands and thousands of plants at my disposal to feed people, sell to people, put in my restaurant. And that's where Farm Camp comes into play. It's actually a fun program we run at our headquarters in Boston, where people come to our headquarters for 2 days to mix some classroom stuff as well as getting into the actual farm and, for lack of a better phrase, getting your hands dirty, where you actually run the equipment, learn how to troubleshoot it. And then we do all sorts of programming for small business farmers. How to talk about your fresh produce, how to market, how to talk to customers, how to engage food safety protocols, things like that, which are big if you're going to work with institutions, cafeterias. They're beholden to a higher power that has a lot bigger liability than just trying to sell at a farmer's market to, a one-to-one relationship to you. If one of you guys got sick because of some greens or something, somebody's going to want to know what happened and make sure A, it doesn't happen again, or it doesn't happen in the first place. So part of Farm Camp is just people being happy in the farm. That's really what this picture is all about. And we do try to have a good time. It is part of the company. If you guys are ever in Boston, definitely let me know. You can come by the headquarters. I got some feedback from the team today. I think there may have been more dogs than people in the office today, which, of course, happens on the day I'm out. But yeah, so a little bit about who grows with us. Like I said, we have everything from these types of characters. This is Sean and Connie Cooney. Connie is a retired school teacher. Sean is a former IT professional. They started with one farm, which is one container, one LGM, back in 2013. They now have 4 in a former tow lot out by Boston Logan Airport. And they sell to a number of restaurants as well as at the Boston Public Market. Then this is Katsarubis Brothers. They're a old school fruit and produce wholesale distributor. So they have like 30 of those trucks running all around greater Boston. Been in business, as you can see, since about 1914. And they have a farm right at their warehouse, and they grow a variety of different lettuces and things for some of their chef customers. And then they actually also buy from the Coonies and some of our other small farmers around Boston. So they're creating their own little ecosystem that's free from the constraints of whatever happens in California or elsewhere. This guy on the right here is Scott DeLuca. Up until about 9 months ago, he was an accountant. and decided he wanted to be a local food entrepreneur in the city of Boston. So he got a farm, and he actually partnered with one of our restaurant partners, Be Good, which is a fast casual, healthy focused local food restaurant, and sited that farm that's behind them actually underneath 93, which is a major highway that runs through Boston. So they took this space that the city didn't know what to do with because it was always dark and kind of scary, and no one wanted to walk through there. Scott threw a farm there and started selling everything to Be Good, which was pretty cool to see. These are two of the BLS students, Boston Latin High School. Like I said, these guys have been running their farm for about 2 years, and they're able to grow some beautiful heads of lettuce that they sell to the community, to the faculty, to the staff, to the parents. And really, it's kind of cool. They get to play with different business models. They get to play with whatever they want to do with their food. On a larger scale, Stony Brook University installed a farm out in Long Island just a few months back. So those are a couple of student volunteers that grow the greens that are served at the Roth Market Fresh Salad Bar on a daily basis. So that's just sort of a snapshot of some of the people who grow with us, everything from big institutional food services all the way through mom and pop entrepreneurs. And that's kind of where I was going to sort of end it, just to give everybody a high-level overview and not talk for an hour about freight farms and me, although I could if you asked me to. So yeah, I mean, if anybody has questions, love to hear it. We'll go 3 rows back. Sure.
Do you plan on bringing these farms to more of a global population, to countries where people might not have the resources to farm, but will be able to farm because they have a freight farm in a local village setting or something like that?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think part of the idea of Grow Food Anywhere is quite that, is to grow food anywhere and put it in the hands of people who wouldn't otherwise be able to. We are a little bit strapped at this point. We are working on some technology, and it's being recorded, whatever, that we're developing what we call our net zero farm. So it's a farm that doesn't require grid connection, can recirculate water and reclaim water out of the air. We're working with some tech partners on that sort of stuff, which will really change the game for dropping it into an area that doesn't have stable grid, doesn't have good water, and so on. But that's a little ways off. In the meantime, we're working with some partners on some financing programs so that people, I mean, we sell them right now for around $80,000, which is no small chunk of change. I don't think most of us in the room have $80,000 in our bank account that we can part with. I know I don't. But having programs in place that would allow people who want to get started with a small down payment to get going. So definitely, just not yet. Sure.
What are some integral steps that maybe other entrepreneurs overlook in making your dream a reality as far as making it a small business?
Key steps are hard to sort of really pin down unless we're talking about something specific. But I think the first step is to pretty much don't listen to anybody else. That worked pretty well for us. I think enough people told us, we actually presented at a conference in 2013, I think. It was an indoor agriculture conference, and literally the top minds in the industry told us that what we were doing was dumb and had no valid place in the market, and we disagreed with them, respectfully of course. But now probably three or four of the guys that I'm thinking about in my head have all tried to figure out how they can offer something like a freight farm. So we just kept going and just kept building it. So.
What is the cost efficiency of a freight farm compared to farming on open land?
I don't know if we've ever done a direct comparison to field-based. The best comparison we've ever done is when we worked with a couple of big food service companies, so like Sodexo, Aramark, Compass Group, a few of the smaller ones that we like, and basically just pulled the stat of how much they pay for like a head of like green leaf lettuce to put into their cafeteria versus what it would cost them to grow it. We pulled some numbers from the USDA over the last 3 years of organic and conventional and in parts of the country And, wasn't quite sure what we would find, and then we pulled it, and it turned out, with all the financing and all the bells and whistles put in, it's costing them about 71 cents per head to grow that plant, and they were paying anywhere from $1.10 to $1.35 for that same head. So once that actually came to the surface, a bunch of these big food service providers started to take notice, and were pretty much saying, if we can save me money, I like that. So I'll go. Was there questions up?
Yeah, how do you find the locations to put the freight farms? Is one question. Also, are there any licensing requirements, and does the Board of Health have anything to do with coming in and inspecting the facility?
Siting is very individual, like very localized. Every municipality in a lot of different ways is different when it comes to siting farms. Most of our farmers end up renting sort of in-between space. So like you'll go to like a parking lot owner and say, there's a section of your lot that's not even paved, can I rent that? And oftentimes the parking lot owners doesn't know what to do, and then it's like, it's kind of found money for me. All I was doing was mowing that like every other month and being like, what am I going to do with that small section? So I had a lot of success there in terms of siting. When it comes to regulating bodies and Board of Health, haven't really run into a lot of issues there. It's mostly based on where it's going. So farmers that are selling into like Whole Foods, they have a lot of steps you have to go through, a lot of certifications, as well as big grocery and things like that. But in terms of the Board of Health, it's also very localized in terms of what governing bodies get involved. But it's kind of cool in that small farmers have been left pretty much alone in a lot of the heavy bureaucracy when it comes to regulation. So most of our farmers fall under that. We had early on, we'd call up like the city of Boston and say, we're going to put a farm over here in Dorchester, and say, all right, cool, how many square feet? 320. They'd be like, no, that's not a farm. So most of them are stuck, so much so that they'll say, call us back when you have 10,000 square feet minimum. So it is local, but we haven't had any real big issues yet.
There's supposed to be a plan where where we want to stop oil production, and then for 50 years we use biofuels or biodiesels, despite biofuels use about like 1/4 of natural gas. But no one wants to make the change for the 50 years, because in those 50 years we make the turn to electricity, so to help the environment. Do you think, but the thing with biofuels, with making biofuels and biodiesels, is the sacrifice of land for crops or for oil, like jatropha trees or corn. So do you think that hydroponic gardens would help change this?
Yeah, I think on a separate note, we should look at what we're using our arable land for in terms of fuel crops. We do have a good example in Iowa. We had a couple who came to us. They grew up on family farms in Iowa, which is farm country, and all of their family farms have been gobbled up and now grow corn and soy, and those are the two crops. But it's fuel crops and commodity crops. And their biggest issue was locally they couldn't get a good piece of local produce. They drive past miles of farms as far as they could see and couldn't get a good piece of produce. So Andrew and Chen started a freight farm right in their town, and demand was through the roof because everybody felt the same way. They all grew up on farms. They all knew what a high quality piece of produce was supposed to be, and they couldn't get their hands on it. Doesn't quite answer your question, but what they did sort of validated for us that there was a need for the solution, even in places that are surrounded by cropland, because of some of the issues with subsidies for growing fuel crops and other things like that. So it's definitely part of the solution. I think it would be great to see it more in concert with traditional soil-based agriculture as well, to sort of create a whole solution. But it's happening. Yeah. You gonna follow up? Or?
This is more about the ecosystem of the freight, but is it self-sufficient? Like, do you need to insert more nutrients, or is it like algae-based, or is it fish-based, or?
Yeah, so the inputs are water, electricity, and then nutrients and seeds. So you do have to put nutrients into the system. So we use some pretty standard hydroponic nutrients.
Are you guys thinking about any new ways to make it like even more self-sufficient and taking away the need to like buy nutrients and plug
Yeah, I mean, like when I was early on, when I was growing for myself, I grew aquaponically and hydroponically, like involving fish in the process and things. It's more a matter of, you know, an aquaponic system, like we're using the fish waste to fertilize the plants, is a really nice, efficient system, but requires a nice, delicate balance because you are working with two biological systems. Where one gets out of whack, it can ruin and affect the other one if it's not carefully managed. And we just didn't have the sensors as of yet to really confidently manage to give an action to the system to help correct that. Where the freight farm now is able to sense something in the water, correct it so that it doesn't impact production for the farmer. So we're not there yet, but it's definitely not off the table, for sure.
Are you limited to just growing leafy greens, or can you grow like carrots and squash, or is it just like what's?
I mean, we focus on leafy greens for pretty much one reason, the idea that I like to consider if you do X, you get Y. So most of our farmers, having never been commercial farmers before, you know, they've got a lot of different things to worry about, other than the million different variables that come with trying to grow hydroponically and growing in a controlled environment. You know, so if we're able to give them instructions and say, do X and you'll get Y, they can plan and say, all right, I'm gonna have 1,000 heads of these two types of lettuce each week. Great, I can go about my business. The farm itself does grow a lot of different stuff. So I mean, we've grown cucumbers, peppers, tomatoes. We tried some pumpkins. I got some broccoli going. We had some of our first strawberries come out earlier today. Of course, I missed that too. It was like dogs and strawberries all day long. So they always do that when I'm away. I don't know what that says about me, but yeah. So a lot of different things. It's just a matter of what fits into the tight equation of if you do X, then you get Y. You know, so it's kind of.
Just kind of play off that question. Do you anticipate the freight farm becoming part of Colorado's marijuana industry or the use of medical marijuana?
I mean, potentially, yeah. We've had a lot of interest in that space, and it's definitely an industry that's getting a lot of attention. There's a lot of money going into it, and there's a lot of potential there, I guess. But it's not really an area we've ever kind of focused on. You know, we started in food, and then sort of the medical marijuana industry kind of just came up, and it's still, I mean, we're still battling federal versus state, you know, so there's a lot of gray area there that, you know, we've actually found enough success in food, and there's a big opportunity there where people are going to keep eating regardless of how much there is, whereas medical marijuana and other things, they could come and go, so we'll see. I'll bet.
Does the freight farm have the ability to grow a variety of different types of greens at the same time? Does it have different environments within the freight system that can grow, say, cabbage in one section of it, and lettuce in another section, and tomatoes in another section? Or do you have to plant or grow all the same thing at the same time?
We don't segment environments within the farm, so not to that level, no. But you can grow a number of different things together at the same time. Generally, what we'll do is, and we have we have a whole database that we build on a regular basis, which is another piece I can touch on, around what crops do extremely well together. You know, so generally what you'll have is some extremes when it comes to environmental conditions. So some of your herbs are more heat tolerant. So, you know, midsummer when it's 90 degrees, they're still doing well, but your lettuce would have been done. You know, so then there's lettuce on the other hand, where some of them, you know, won't get their flavor, their color, or their texture if it's above, you know, 65 degrees. So those two pieces probably wouldn't be together, but there's a whole spectrum of plants that are somewhere in the middle where if you keep in a certain range, and then you can also play with different things like, you know, like the nutrient blends, the amount of water, the amount of light, things like that to optimize for those. So it all depends on what you want to get out of it. But
And you do need electricity to run the system. Have you ever thought of solar panels?
yeah, we've thought of solar, and right now we're talking to some solar partners, try and find the right fit, because we're not solar experts, don't claim to be, and probably never will be, but working with some solar companies that are, to create a solar array that would match our farm. We sort of took the housing efficiency approach to it, where it's like, you know, we'll seal our envelope, we'll get our system as efficient as possible. So like one of the goals going from 2014 to 2015 was to reduce the power draw on the farm by 30%. We didn't quite hit it. It was like 26%, I think, was like the final number. But that 26% is 26% that wouldn't have to be produced by solar panels, or pulled off the grid. So we're not there yet, but we're looking for it.
With the $80,000 price tag, do you have any nonprofits that have been able to access the Great Farm system?
I mean, I think the only nonprofits are the high school in Boston, where we wrote a grant with them in partnership with them. We have a few others that are in the works. We'll work with them to write grants together. We're also working on a partnership with more of an education community engagement partner in New York. They currently have an installation in Harlem, and they want to expand to the Bronx, I believe. So they have some good connections. They have some good money to back them to do good programming. And where we don't do extensive programming, 'cause that's not our area of expertise, they do. They just don't do the technology part. So we're working on a partnership with them so that they'll develop the curriculum, the community outreach program, the workforce development piece, and we can provide the hardware, the training, the technical know-how. So we're not quite there yet, but I think once we have a few of those partners in place, it'll make it a lot easier for us to put it in the hands of nonprofits. Either one.
Could you tell us a little bit about your background with farming and if this started out as a business venture or a project to get more fresh produce out?
So my background with farming is limited, and I think when we first got into it, everyone, I got a lot of flack for that, and so did my co-founder John. That we were a couple kids who didn't know what we were doing. We got that a lot, and it actually ended up ultimately helping us a lot. But my background in farming was really sort of being in the city. And becoming interested in food and where it came from and what I was consuming, and then how I could grow it, and then I did the thing in my apartment in Brighton. I did like a backdoor planter thing, and I grew some lettuce, and then I was like, that looks so much better than what I'm getting at the grocery store. Like that's strange. Is that how it's supposed to be? So I was kind of like a noob in that regard. In that these seasoned farmers know what a great plant is supposed to look like. I was still sort of coming into it at that point. So then I became fascinated with how is it grown, where does it come from? Started growing hydroponically, aquaponically in my apartment because I was like, it's Boston in the winter, I'm not doing anything outside. But I can do stuff on my windowsill, I can bring in lighting, I can create systems, this is really cool. So that was sort of where my farming experience started. And then from there it was just more about how can I sort of create this epiphany for more people like me? Who are finally like, oh wow, that's what actually a good head of lettuce is supposed to look like. Oh, that's incredible. Starting Freight Farms, we actually, when we first jumped in, we had no idea really what we were trying to get ourselves into. We jumped into rooftop. We were going to be platform agnostic in terms of convince somebody to let us on their roof, which is no small feat. If you've ever tried to get on the roof of one of these buildings here, and I don't think it's allowed, so don't try. Convincing them to let you on your roof and evaluate it for what their end goal is. If it was for food production, if it was for, marketing, if it was for whatever, was really our introduction to the business side of food. And I think at that time I was actually in grad school and doing a lot of study on the business side around food systems and supply chains and things like that. And on the environmental side, around sort of the environmental chemistry of food production and things like that. And the two were just kind of coming together in this mass conglomeration of a mess that went bigger and deeper than I even thought was imaginable. And so we were like, it's inherently a business issue when it comes to food because it's a product that everybody consumes every single day. There's no way around it. We haven't gotten to the weird magic goop or pill form yet that I hope we never get to. So we still have to eat. So it's a little bit of both.
So you said the closed system eliminated the need for GMOs or pesticides. Have you received any interest from rural areas for this particular reason, other than urban areas? And if not, can you see it moving into non-urban areas in the future?
Yeah. Definitely. We have a really interesting farmer down in Arkansas who is actually funny. money and land were not an issue for him. You know, he lives on, I think, like 40 acres. He has a tractor, like all these things. There's just nothing around there. It's not quite farmland. It's just kind of rural country. And for him, it was more about the efficiency of being able to produce. You know, he knew he could produce food year-round in this environment. You know, so when it comes to the rural installations, we're still just sort of like scratching the surface with, you know, farmers. I mean, I think that's sort of one of the more interesting things that has happened is the farmers are more creative than we are. You know, we put freight farms into the hands of, you know, first year it was like 3 people, and that was in like 2013, then it was like 11 in like 2014, then it'll be like 50 this year. And even just those like first like dozen farmers have come up with more interesting like ways to use it, crops to grow, recipes to use, business models to explore than like we could have done if we had 50 farms, you know, in a lab or in a warehouse somewhere just experimenting all day long. Because these people put it in their home, they put it in their community, and then they say we have to make this work. And nothing drives you faster than saying, like, well, if I don't make $1 on this thing, I have to close the door. So we've seen some really interesting things there. 2 minutes?
No.
Oh.
All right. Oh, no. Could you give us some sense of the availability and cost of containers?
Yeah. I mean, we do use recycled reefer containers. So in their first life, they were big refrigerators. You know, sometimes I use the anecdote. It's ironic that like the refrigerated reefer container actually made the cold supply chain possible, which made global transport of fresh and frozen goods possible. And now we take it, flip it on its ear, and make local food production possible again. But containers as a whole are readily available. You know, you can get them pretty much in every port city. There's more or less a surplus. And then when it comes to the big companies, Maersk and some of these others, you know, it's more efficient for them at the end of a quarter to write off a few old containers that have a few dings and dents, you know, than to, you know, have a staff on hand to repair them. And that's where we get most of our containers. Is they have a big refrigeration unit on the back that is a big mechanical structure that breaks down, and so it's more efficient for them just to get new ones rather than keep a staff of engineers and mechanics on staff to fix those. So I mean, you can get a steel box container, a regular one, probably like $1,200, $1,500 depending on the condition. One of our first ones we got for like $600. We built a prototype in it. I wouldn't suggest getting one like that because it had been used and cut and it was ugly. You know, we get our containers for anywhere from like $2,000 to $5,000 if we use really nice insulated reefer containers.
So can you just explain to me what do you get for $80,000?
Sure. Yeah.
And what is the return on your investment?
Yeah. No, absolutely. I mean, I think that's.
That information.
Yeah, that connection is relatively important. It's very important for most of our customers. So the critical element is the design and the implementation of the entire system within the farm. You know, so having all of the components within the farm that have been perfectly designed and built to work in conjunction with each other efficiently. So we get knocks from like Philips and some of these other light companies because they're like, you don't use the most powerful, you know, drivers or diodes in your LED structures. And we say, you're right, we don't. Because then if you do that, it produces a certain amount of heat that then you have to use more energy to remove. And then you have to use more energy to drive those lights. Whereas if you put it in the right configuration, get it close enough to the plant's optimal environment, you can produce a nice plant. So it's really more about the system, the design, and then actually being able to work as a single person, you know, under 40 hours a week in your farm to grow, you know, like 1,000 heads of lettuce on a weekly basis. So that, you know, our farmers who, you know, moving their, like if they do the lettuce program that a lot of our farmers do, you know, they'll see a return on investment under 5 years on their farm. You know, we have a few farmers that have, you know, really worked on their business model and, you know, are seeing, you know, on an $80,000 investment, you're seeing over $90,000 a year in revenue. You know, so for them, you know, it starts to work out much quicker. especially if their costs are under 30K a year to operate.
Are there any things that you need to worry about from a maintenance point of view if something happens to the unit and you need to service it, or do you lose your whole crop? And if so, what do you do?
I mean, there is the risk that you could lose your whole crop for some anomaly. I don't think we've seen that since the early days. We've lost. I've killed a lot of plants, sad to say.
So, like,
Lots and lots. But the part of the design phase in the system was to sort of eliminate some of those key risks. You know, the risk being light, water, and air. You know, so having the sealed insulated container, generally depending on the ambient temperatures and conditions, your farm will maintain its interior conditions, you know, for anywhere from 12 to 36 hours. So you'll have time to, you know, figure out a solution, you know, if it's an electrical issue, generator, or if it's a localized short-term blackout, sort of wait it out. You know, then having alerts from the software, like if you have a pump failure, if your lights go out, things like that. You know, but
How do you get it fixed?
yeah, exactly.
Like you're in Arkansas and
Yep.
you're in Boston.
Yeah, so I mean, when it comes to the critical components, you know, one of the things we did is when some of the early farms, we had these big custom like environmental control systems and things like that. And you know, one of the big pieces we realized, I actually was able to work with one of my high school buddies, who is now a certified electrician, does mostly houses, but you know, some commercial work as well. More or less brought him in to make sure I wasn't going to burn the place down and electrocute myself or kill anyone. But also to see, you know, what was his take on it from, you know, he looks at standard electrical boxes at houses and buildings all day long. And, you know, working with him, we basically dumbed down the electrics to the point where a certified electrician in any state would be able to look at it. They'll say, I have no idea what's going on outside of this box, but I can diagnose this electrical setup to fix it if need be, if it's a fuse issue, whatever. So then what we did is we looked at the same thing with the climate control, so the HVAC and things like that, where again, standard HVAC technician, you know, at $75 an hour can be there probably in a day or so, whereas if you go with a big custom solution, it's going to be $1,200 minimum and the person might not get out there for 2 weeks. In that time, you've lost all your crops. So sort of from the earliest prototypes to sort of the more commercial production is we took some of those complex systems and, you know, tried to like dumb it down to a regular, more commercially viable option in that you can call an electrician, you can call an HVAC tech, and they'll come over and in a day and for maybe $150 diagnose and fix your HVAC system. When it comes to the other components, like the other critical elements, pretty much pumps. So if you have a pump issue, a pump goes down, you know, that's something where, you know, you can replace it relatively quickly. You know, we try to right size our pumps in the system and make them, everything has quick disconnects. So you can disconnect a union and replace a pump, which is probably at most $200, you know, in a pinch. And we're working on some of the software pieces as well. Some of this Internet of Things aspect of having the hardware talk to the software so that the pumps will actually be self-diagnosing in terms of, I know I have an 80,000 hour run life and you're coming up on 65,000 hours, and based on the recipe you're running, I'm going to be running to my 80,000 hour usable life in 3 weeks. Might want to order a replacement now. I could last another 4 years, but do you want to take that chance? Might as well have one on hand. And then what we can do is with that pump send you basically the digital video sort of tutorial of here's how to replace your pump if and when it gets to that point. So there's no way to like totally mitigate all those risks, but you know, I think one of the things we did was put the farm in the hands of people who are going to be customers and who were customers, and then just, you know, let them feedback what was wrong, what needed to be improved, and things like that, so that the farm today is built for people who, you know, basically we tried to build a farm that our first 12 farmers would have like just lost their mind for.
Okay. If you'd like to speak a bit with Brad, you can come up front, but let's thank you for coming out and